Hello and welcome back to the second module from MyThesis Academy. Well, in this module, I would like to share the ideas of how to start to write the thesis. Now that we already learned in the first module about the preparational tasks and about what is a thesis and skills that you will develop when you write a thesis, now we will go more into detail and get to know how to approach a thesis subject and also about your strengths. What makes you an outstanding candidate for a particular thesis project? Last but not least, in the third part of the second module, I will like to talk about the thesis statement, a very important point for every student who writes a thesis, independent if you are writing a bachelor, a master thesis, or a dissertation. So let's start with the first part, which is how to approach a thesis topic and to get ahead until you develop your final working title. So, to provide you with a little overview about the first part, I would like to present the topic and the details of this class. To approach a thesis subject includes some subcategories, some crucial points. First, we will have a look at the question of how to locate a gap of research and how to identify a research problem. Then we will get over to the aspect of choosing a focus, followed by the definition of aims and objectives of your thesis. Then we will continue with the limitations, because how to set limitations in order to the scope of your thesis is also a fundamental question. And last but not least, we will see how we arrive to a working title of your thesis. The working title is something that shows the work in progress. It's a title that you will define when you hand in your thesis proposal, but at least until you really submit and complete your thesis, it is possible that your title will change a little bit. That's why I call it working title. Maybe if you are at the moment that you are starting your thesis, you are thinking about all the upcoming tasks which are lying in front of you. So maybe you are thinking about the literature that you're going to read, all the different stuff regarding the research idea, the gap, the topic from different perspectives and point of views. And then you think about the research, the practical research, and the data collection. Maybe you imagine the moment of analyzing your data and evaluating. And last but not least, you have the process of writing, of academic writing in the right tone, and also the moment of correcting and proofreading your thesis, also of layout and formatting stuff until you can submit the thesis. But well, these are things and tasks and challenges that are upcoming. But first, we want to know, how do you really start your thesis? How to approach a thesis topic and a subject. So, to set up your working title, you have to be sure about some principal issues that define your thesis in a certain way. So you have to know the approach, how you approach to a thesis subject, how you define your focus of research and investigation, how do you formulate your aims and objectives, also the limitations that you have to set, and then you will arrive at the creation of your working title. Well, the first important issue is to find a thesis subject. Maybe you are thinking about some ideas and some potential issues that you always thought about, that are interesting, that caught your attention during classes and maybe also term papers. But well, here I would like to present you some approaches of how do you get to a thesis subject, how do you find a thesis subject, and well, let's have a look at the different possibilities, the different perspectives, and the points of view that you can take, the approach. So the first way is that you get inspired by topics from present or former classes. It's very important, if you choose a thesis subject, that you are kind of familiar, that there's something new, but also that you have maybe some relation that you already developed during a class or a term paper or whatever it is, but something where you have already an idea about what it can be and how the approach can be. So maybe you wrote an exam, or you had a class with some special subject that caught your attention and where you always thought, oh my God, this is very interesting. I would like to get know a little bit more about that. So this is the right way also to stay motivated. Well, maybe you already wrote some, not just term papers, but also articles, drafts, maybe also a thesis. I don't know if you are in the stage of the master thesis or the PhD thesis. Maybe you wrote about some topic that you were very interested in your bachelor's or your master thesis, and that you thought that you could, that you can deepen with the next step, with the next thesis. So this is one possibility, one approach that you can take. Then there's also a second question that you can have in consideration when you choose and opt for a topic and a thesis subject. So ask yourself, what area are you interested in from your specific field of research? Are you interested in historical questions or more in contemporary topics? Maybe you are passionate with comparative or aesthetical or systematic studies. And maybe you are also thinking about realizing an empiric research, including interviews and a fieldwork. This is also something that you can keep in mind and think about when you opt for your thesis subject. Then there's also a third and a fourth approach that can help you to identify yours. First, what I would do is to look up the recent secondary literature in your field of interest. When you investigate, don't leave the online sources out, because the online sources, well, there's a mass of data, but there are also, the most recent and the most actual points of investigation. If you look up the secondary literature to get inspired and find a thesis subject, then try to consult the closing section, such as the prospects, because they present a collection of ideas for further research and name the limitations of this publication. So this is something that you also have to provide in your thesis, like a section of prospects that name the limitations and provide some new ideas for upcoming research. Then another approach is that you already created a project or a draft of potential ideas. Maybe you generated if you wrote a paper and or a thesis also, and you collected some ideas for further research and what you'll be interested in. Maybe you have already some ideas, and now try to sum it up and create a list of positive and maybe also negative points that you can use as a base for comparison between the different ideas. This is another approach and another possibility. What is always helpful is to get in dialogue with your fellows and also other colleagues, and maybe tell them about your ideas and different topics and simply ask them about their opinion on one or another subject. So dialogue is something that always helps if you need to take a decision. Now, just to sum it a little bit up and to have it clear how you locate a gap of research, we already had it inside the question of how to locate a fitting thesis subject. You can start up thinking about interesting research areas that are making part of your area, of your field of interest and of your study area. So think about the areas that are possible that you can take, like specializations of your field of interest. Then search for literature, for secondary literature, which provides actual gaps in the part of the prospects of the future research ideas and also of the limitations. And then the way is free to discover gaps of research and to develop your specific topic from one of these gaps. Now we are getting over to the next question, which is the research problem and the focus, principally the focus. If you found a thesis subject that is interesting for you, the next step and the next task will be to develop a research question with your aims and objectives, and also to shape a certain focus. Because if you write a thesis, you have the scope of your thesis, and that's why you will also have the section of the future prospects and the limitations. In a thesis, you can deal with certain aspects and clear and answer a research question, but you are just one researcher and the thesis has also a scope. It is limited. So think about the focus. And here, once again, it is really important to stay realistic with your focus and with the goals that you want to complete. So the first approach that I would take if I had to choose a research problem, and to get to my focus, I would observe the gaps that you locate in the actual literature, then write down the different phases and facets. So you can start with the generation of a mind map where you collect keywords just to get in a flow and just to get a certain overview on what is interesting for you and what is part of this very of this gap. Then in the second step would be to divide this generated keyword, this mind map, into thematical areas, to create subcategories, and also to create links between them, to think about in which form are they related to each other. So you can create categories and then subcategories. The subcategories are a little bit more detailed and, well, already more focused on one aspect. Then, what you already know, consider the scope to know exactly how much you can go into detail. And then think about, once again, create a list of the positive and negative points and maybe give them a weight. Like there can be one argument which is stronger than another. Then you can give more weight to this argument and decide, well, what is the most important for you, where are your priorities, and so on. This helps you step by step to get from a bunch of ideas into the into an argumentation and figure out, crystallize the most fitting one for you. Then there's a third approach. This is once again the question. If you are more interested in historical, in popular, in contemporary, or in theoretical topics, well, this is also something that you should keep in mind. What are you interested in? What is your field of passion, of interest? And it helps you also to find out the fitting one for you. I'm sure that in your area of research, there are various questions dealing with historical or popular topics and themes, and also approaches and ideas which are dealing with the subject more from a theoretical perspective or from a practical one, where you have to build all your sources and materials basically on your own. So this is something that you already can think about at this very point. Then the fourth approach is also, well, related to that. Think about if you are more passionate with theoretical or practical questions. Because maybe in my case, for example, I like the practical approach. I like to do field work and to collect my data by myself, to get in touch with the people and realize interviews and, well, to work with observation and this kind of stuff. Everything which has to do with empirical research. But there are also students who like to guide their analysis more from a theoretical point of view and work and maybe compare or refine different theories. So think about what is a fitting and what you like. So, okay, let's go ahead. Now, we are getting right to the point where we try to find out how to define your aims and objectives for your thesis. So how to get from the central idea, from the general research idea, to the specific focus, to the aims and to objectives. And there I collected 4 steps that you can take to approach. First, once again, start with a mind map. I like mind maps and possibilities of visualization because you get closer idea than if you just play with the ideas on your mind. It's very helpful to have a paper or even to do it with a computer, whatever you like, whatever you want or prefer. But it is helpful and it is very fundamental to have the possibilities in a visual form in front of you. So I would give you the advice to start with a mind map and to write down all characteristic components and key points which are shaping your gap of research. What is part? What makes it out? For this, you can get inspired by the literature and you can also get in dialogue, once again, with your fellow students or with friends and discuss and share the ideas with them. Maybe you can even show them their mind map and ask them what they think. Then is the moment where you get more into detail. So write down a selection of details, of key elements and categories for essential components that you found, that you made out. The third step consists of questions that you have to answer. So, which kind of approach to the research problem is the most interesting for you? Here, you can vote on the historical, analytical, comparative, aesthetical, or also social cultural approach. For example, the fourth step, find out what is the most interesting from all these points that you found out. So, where do you see the maximal potential and also where you feel the best? What is the point where you can get passionate? Which approach enables the maximal findings? This is also a question that you can ask yourself. So where do you have the great chance to develop something in you, maybe? And well, also if you define your aims and objectives, then you also have to think about the limitations, because it is very good if you have a number of possibilities and what you can reach with the findings. But at the end, you have to think carefully of what is feasible and realistic to reach with your thesis, with the scope of your thesis, and also with the time frame. So now that we have some closer idea about the focus of research that you can take, I would like to get more into detail when it comes to the definition of aims and objectives. First, I would like to focus on the aims. So what are the aims of your research and what is characteristic for the objectives? Where is difference? What makes it out? To put it in a nutshell, you can say that, or you can keep in mind that the aims are your promise to the reader and so also your fundament. Aims and objectives are like pillars to construct your thesis. They are forming the fundament, they are building the fundament, and they transmit first what your research is about, like the core of your research, and also why does it matter. So what will be your contribution, your intent? And last but not least, also, how do you plan to approach? This, once again, is also very important. So the why, the what, and the how. Well, first, what can you do? What can be an aim of your research, of your thesis? First, it can be that you question or refine an existing theory, concept. This is a more theoretical approach. Then you can also test a theory in some new empirical setting. So you can find new possibilities, new frames to test an existing theory. This is a practical approach. Then you can also develop a new concept or a model or even an entire theory. This is, I think, one of the most challenging things, because you are really constructing something totally new with using some conceptual theoretical lens, but at the end, well, you are really constructing a new conception from your data. Then you can also aim to construct a new data set to build up the theory. This is related to the third point. And then you can replicate an existing study. Let's have a look at the objectives. So the objectives are the second part. How to approach? Well, when you formulate your approach, then avoid repeating your methodology in detail. So the object tells about the how you will do it. What is important is first that you describe very precisely and clear what you will do. So how, in which way do you approach? Do you approach the aims? How do you reach the aims? For this, it is very important that you stay very precise and that you avoid vague formulations, for example. It has to be realistic and feasible, and in consideration of the time frame and also of the scope. This, once again, is important. And it also has to be measurable. So keep it very clear what indicates that you reach the objectives. So the aims is basically about what you want to do, where do you want to reach, and the objects are the definition of how do you want to reach there. If you have some doubts, you can also have a look at the blog from Professor Pat Thompson. There's also a good explication about that. Now, to close this circle, I would like to mention some things that you should keep in mind when you develop and create your aims and objectives. First, the advice that you locate them as early as possible in your thesis. Why? It is like with the focus of research and with the research question. The earlier, the better, because you don't want to let the reader guessing for a long time what are you planning to do and how to approach. So then, also related to this, be precise and stay specific with the aims and objectives. Don't be vague. Then, as a second advice, once again, don't overestimate the space. Even if you write a PhD thesis, which is the most extensive of the 3 thesis types, then you also have time and space for at least 3 aims. This is important to keep it in mind because it is also a question of feasibility. You want to reach there, you want to complete the aims, and you want to do this in a certain time and in a certain scope. Then, when you define your aims, make sure that there is a logical flow and a relation, connection between them. There has to be an overall sense. They have to be kind of connected, and there has to be a relation, a link between them to build and to construct a kind of coherency. Then what you also should keep in mind is that you always can revise and refine your aims. So set you some time frames and check and recheck in regular episodes and moments, the initial aims and if they are still valid. Because if you reach at the end of your thesis and you find out that the aims that you formulated in the beginning are completely different, well, you should refine and think about to adjust. It's very important then what you promise with your aims, that this is also fulfilled and fulfilled in a logical way for the reader when he reaches the end of the thesis. There has to be this connection. So last but not least, just the little question, where is the right place? So as I said, as earlier possible, the earlier is the better. So you can place them right in the introduction and if possible, even in the dissertation abstract. Now I would like to do you some, I would like that you complete a little exercise, that you try to put your aims and objectives and, well, that you create yours in a document. So what you can do is that you put the core, like I named it in a nutshell, that you put the core in the headline and describe in a clear and simple term and provide it like a kind of take-home message for the reader. So think about your reader, imagine that you are the reader, and think about if there is a take-home message for him. Then think about, well, you can do it in 3 steps. Create a mind map and unite all the ideas you have. Then start step by step to reduce them. As I said, it is very helpful if you have some visual elements and like a paper that is in front of you. So take a paper or Post-it and write down, in this research I will, and try to complete it. Then in the second step, try to find precise and short answers on the what and on the how. What will I do and how will I do it? How will I approach? And in the third step, reduce the answers until they fit on one single Post-it note. And remind only 2 to 3 aims. This is important. So don't come up with the excuse that your research is too complex to put it in a few sentences. It is important that you have the what and the how completely clear, and well, you also have to be aware that you don't need to present the richness and the full richness of your project. But important is that you are able to sum up everything in a short and condensed form. First, what you are planning to do, and then how are you planning to do it. Good luck. Well, now that we defined your research subject and also the aims and objectives, I would like to talk about the limitations and how do you set limitations. I know this is a quite complicated question because maybe you are tempted to to make the research bigger and greater as it can be as it fits in a certain scope. So it is very necessary that you identify the crucial key points for your research and that you pay attention on the moment where you go too far with the aims and objectives. Instead, try to keep it in one frame and don't extend the frame still and still more. If I were you, I would try to come up with a detailed question. And if you see that there is more scope and more place, then you can extend it, but not right from the start. So the first limit is the question of what is your specific focus of investigation. And even if you have new ideas and if there are new inspirations coming up every day and you think, oh, I can include this and also this is important and this is also possible. Think about and remember your focus and have this focus clear. Even if you put it on a paper, on a post-it, whatever, and read it from time to time. So don't get too far on this way. And don't to try to do everything. This is what I basically like to say. Stick to your decisions. Then the second limit is the scope that we already talked about. So try to make a realistic calculation of the number of pages that you may write per section, calculate the chapters that you have, and note down more or less the calculation of the pages that you can spend on one chapter or section to have an idea about the possible extent of the analysis and of the discussion chapters. It is not necessary that it is exactly the number of pages that you will spend, but approximately, like that you have an idea of what is possible. Then there's a third limit, which is, well, if you aim to submit your thesis on a specific deadline, then try to make a list, a priority list also, from the remaining months and the remaining time and the time where you can approach and fulfill the aims and also the objectives, like how and when do you want to do something to complete your aim, one of your aims in a specific moment. This is also something that can help, like to make a firm schedule defining the time that you will spend with one aim and the second and the third or whatever. And well, try to be very honest to yourself. Like, divide the questions which are really in the focus of your research, and try to eliminate the, let's say, unnecessary extras or things where you get out of the frame, out of the focus, which are really which you can maybe add if there's time and space, but otherwise focus on the important questions. What I also would like to mention is that you should discuss and stay always in dialogue with the supervisor, also with fellow students, to provide you with some opinion, with advice on your draft and on what are you working out. What I would do is also to participate in symposia and colloquia, because there's a chance to discuss with colleagues and to get a kind of second or third opinion on the material that you already developed. This can help you and also provide you with an external point of view on what you are creating, and if you are on the right way, or if you are, like I said here, if you are already slipping out of the interesting part and going far into unnecessary details. This is very helpful to check it and to get it checked by other persons from time to time. So now we are reaching at the point and the question where we want to know how to get from the thesis topic that we already developed with the thesis subject and focus and aims and objectives to the working title. Well, the key here, once again, is to be as precise as you can, even though keep in mind that this working title is really a working title. So this means that this title is a work in process. It can change, it can develop from the moment where you submit your thesis proposal until the submission of the thesis. But be careful, because some universities already want you to hand in the title, like the valid title of your thesis or dissertation, when you submit the thesis proposal. Others, like the case of my university, they just want to have an idea of what you are planning to do, of your topic, but they don't demand the complete and the valid title, the end title. So this is something that you should figure out before. And then no matter if you are dealing with working title or already with the submission of the final title, you can get some help by the points that you are seeing here. So how do you develop this title? First, you can start to filter the important keywords from your research and, well, from the research question and your focus. Try to collect the most important keywords. Then try to relate them, to put them together and find out what is the core, what is the essential idea and the message that you want to transmit. Here, be as precise and as specific as you can. What I would do is also to select an eye-catcher as the main title. This means that you can choose a kind of a provocative title, something illustrative that keeps that the reader will keep in mind, something creative, whatever you want. This you can select as a main title, and then in the subtitle be as concrete and as specific and narrow your topic down as well, as focused and as condensed as you can. To help you a little bit, you can choose formulations like study on, and then you provide the specific focus. You talk about the focus, and then, for example, on the example of. Yeah, and here you can name some concrete companies that are part of your work, like case study groups or concepts that will be the core of your work, whatever you want. But once again, just to make it sure, collect the keywords which are part of your focus of your research question. Then think about a working a title which includes some eye catchers. And then in the third part, in the subtitle, be as specific as you can. Also to frame the work and also to frame it already in the first view. Well, we are reaching at the end of this first part of our second model from the e-learning. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you have an idea of how you will get from the very first idea to a thesis subject, and then through the focus and aims and objectives to your working title. And we will continue in the second part with the questions of how do you identify your specific strengths that makes you an outstanding candidate from the others. See you there.